Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board & Co. This is going to be a very awkward video. So this is Monster Hunter World. We have a whole bunch of boxes, a whole lot of stuff in front of us, and we're going to be going through a bunch of these games. Now, you may have already seen the channel a full unboxing of this whole stuff. You can check that out if you want. This is a slightly different conversation around. Well, let me put it this way. Selfishly, I've played Monster Hunter World. I've played the base game Monster Hunter World. I've gone through both. I haven't actually dove into it since this all showed up, but I played it doing the Kickstarter campaign. I've gone through a few monsters, played it a bunch of times, enjoyed the universe, great. And there's all this stuff. There's all this stuff. There's all these fun like stuff over here, and we're having a conversation around what your favorite stuff was. I was like, we can make this into a video and have a conversation around what is all the stuff over here that we can get into, because this is when this is in retail.
Retail in October.
Hitting retail in October. So this video is useful for you on two counts. Either if you are looking to figure out what you want to buy in Monster Hunter World, this might be a fun conversation. Or if you're looking to figure out how you want to engage with the Monster Hunter World that showed up at your doorsteps 2, 3, 4 weeks ago, whenever you got it, that could also be a helpful conversation.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Because that's why I want
where to start. Yeah.
Because I've played through the Ancient Forest. I've played I've played with the content of the Ancient Forest, some of the hunters, some of the monsters. I've enjoyed the world. If you want the very high level of Monster Hunter World, you have a bunch of hunters. It's going to be, well, obviously based on the video game. You have a bunch of hunters. You're going to be fighting these monsters across either single shot or campaign missions, trying to take down a bunch of monsters in the game and leveling up, crafting gear, doing all those fun things. Very, very high level. Lots of content on this channel and other channels. You can check it out more. The thing I'm more intrigued by is, okay, great. I've played Ancient Forest, I've played some of the content Ancient Forest, I've seen some of the hunters, some of the monsters, some of the gear. Great. I want to figure out where to go next. But to start off with, before we dive into the whys and the hows and everything else, what's your favorite? We have two core sets here. We have Wildspire Wastes and we have Ancient Forest.
Yes.
And then everything else is expansion content. Okay.
Correct. And one thing that's before we start that's important to kind of stress is these are standalone core sets, so it doesn't matter which one you pick.
Yeah.
So when we pick, it's not.
It's personal preference.
It's not prescriptive. It's it's personal preference.
And there's all the stuff we got here. This is the stuff that is going to retail.
Yes.
As well.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you back Kickstarter, there will be some additional.
A few extra monsters and boxes and stuff. But we're going to be focusing on this stuff for now.
Yeah.
So starting off the bat, before we get into the why, which is your favorite core set?
So I think quite handily, I've got it next to me. The Ancient Forest for me is my favourite, largely because I'm a simple creature at heart, and these are the much more straightforward hunters in this box.
What's your favourite expansion?
You
have 3 to choose from here.
So the trouble is, I've got a real dilemma because I really love playing the Hammer Hunter. Which you get in the Hunter's expansion.
Well, right now you just walked into your entire Monster Hunter World collection just went up in flame. For some reason, Steamforge is refusing to give you another one.
Right.
And so you've walked into your local retail store. Yeah, you've walked into your local retail store and you're picking one core set and one expansion because that's all your budget allows for. What are you walking out with?
I'm going to go with the Ancient Forest, and I am probably going to go with Kushala Daora.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, cool. Here you go.
Because I like big things.
Now, Jamie, feel free to grab any of his boxes. What are you going with?
No, I'm actually very different. So for me, someone who's worked on this game since day dot from a mechanical perspective, then I'm someone who perfectly enjoys the slightly more complicated hunters that are in the Wildspire Wastes.
Okay, and what expansion?
So and that's going to be Nergigante, just because I think this probably comes evident in any other Monster Hunter video that I've been in. I just love this monster. I think from a visual perspective and from the way it plays, I think it's just very cool. It's incredibly imposing on the game board, and there's a reason why when we did we only did one digital module that included an Elder Dragon. There's a reason why that was Nergigante.
Which leaves me with the little Hunter's Arsenal. You passed me that. Hopefully I can play with that. This is playable on its own, right? Completely playable on its own?
It is not.
With a core set.
With a core set. Cool. Alright. So now we got the high level, so fine. So why? We got these 4 monsters. Let's talk about the Ancient Forest first. The Ancient Forest comes with 4 monsters. Great, we got these 4 basic monsters, and you chose it because, what? The sculpts, the design? Tell me the reasons for the things.
So, I mean, I love playing games, but I also love painting minis. And for me, any time I get to kind of exercise my airbrush is a good time. And things like the electric squirrel, as we affectionately refer to him, is a good time with my airbrush. But I think these are going to represent a really interesting challenge from a painting perspective.
You want to pull them back, drop. They're not on camera.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Perfect.
There we go.
Now, personally, by the way, now from a gameplay stance, I've only played, I believe, if I recall correctly, I think I've only played against the left and the right monster there, and the front table there. But from a pure sculpt stance, my favorite sculpts, offhand, without even talking about anything else, are from this box over here. I love this Hammerhead guy. And by the way, I've not played the video game,
Yeah.
so excuse my complete lack of knowledge of the official names.
So that's Baroth.
I love Barroth. His head is just amazing, awesome. This like sandworm type thing that looks like it's about to dive into the sand and also jump up and attack at the same time.
Yeah.
I appreciate the uniqueness of that sculpt. And then in general, that giant, this guy right here, whatever his name is, Diabolos. He just looks like he's bringing the battle.
Yeah.
And so we have these monsters over here that I like this one from a pure set of these sculpts. Nothing about the gameplay. I know nothing about the gameplay differences.
I think what you've got with that is more exotic looking creatures, whereas this feels a little bit more classic, if you know what I mean. You've got a more dragony shape, a more dinosaur-y shape, and then a couple more kind of just big beasties. They though are really...
Now from a gameplay standpoint...
Now you've got them out though, I'm now right. I might have messed up. No, I'm going to stick with my choice.
Sure.
So how do these monsters feel when they play?
So, which ones do you want to ask about? Because they're all totally different.
Let's pick 2 from each core set. Pick your favorite 2 from the set, and just what about them? How do they play? How does it feel?
Sure. So actually, the two I'm going to pick out gameplay wise from this core set are actually the 2 you focus on the most, which is Baroth. This is actually your opening monster. It's your equivalent of Great Jagras from the Ancient Forest. And what this guy teaches you straight away that Great Jagras doesn't teach you is that the monster can definitely one-shot you from the beginning of the game if you're not careful with your stamina board. It's a very different set of lessons, and it's also completely immune to stun, which there aren't many monsters in the game that are. And stun is the one status ailment that's kind of baked into every hunter's core base deck from the beginning. So it teaches you some very different things and some very hard principles to begin with, which is also why it's probably the slightly more difficult of the 2 beginning monsters to play against.
Cool.
But I just kind of I enjoy the increased challenge, and I just we were talking before about how we kind of enjoy the look and the sort of the chitinous armor of this monster quite a lot as well. I think it's just very good fun to play with.
And so Matt, let's go with one of yours.
I'm for opposite reasons. I'm also going to go with the starting creature, which is the Jagras, the Great Jagras. First creature.
Call quickly. He's like tumbling back and forth, right?
Yeah. But I think he's often overlooked because he's the first creature you kind of interact with. Slightly underestimated, but fairly direct, fairly simple to kind of play against, but still with lots of movement. And I think that's going to be a theme. I like lots of movement and things.
Sure.
Like I remember particularly he would tumble in ways that would either attack you or get himself out of combat in ways that either way was irritating.
Yes.
Either smacking into you or suddenly he's 3 steps away from you and you can't actually hit him.
Yeah.
Okay. So for me, then we were going to talk about Diabolos. So Diabolos, one of the reasons why I think Diabolos is very cool is because there are 2 versions of Diabolos for starters that you can get to play with. So there's regular Diabolos and then there's Black Diabolos when you have different sets of cards for both those monsters.
And that was one of the Kickstarter extras too. Black Diabolos, was that?
So Black Diabolos we created an alternate sort of color miniature of this.
Yep.
But you already get the gameplay for Black Diabolos in the core box. So you can already play with Black Diabolos using the same miniature in Wildspire Wastes. So the fact that there's 2 different ways to play the monster to begin with, they play in very different ways, and this is actually the largest non-Elder Dragon miniature as well. So just from a miniature perspective, it's the only one that's 120mm base out of all the core box miniatures.
There's a player character next to it.
Yeah, and it's just an absolute, quite literally an absolute monster. So very much enjoy that.
Absolute monster.
Yes. The thing with Black Diabolos in particular, the two of them, I slightly prefer to play the Black Diabolos version, is because that's the one that burrows underground. So this is the one the monster that will teleport across the board to come and get you, and then continue the rest of its behaviour before it sort of continues the rest of its turn.
Is this the one what was the one in the movie? The movie had this giant one that was going underground.
That was Diabolos.
That was Diabolos, okay.
I'm pretty sure it was Diabolos and Rathlos that had in the movie. Although
Gotcha.
I will add that I haven't seen it.
Gotcha.
But I remember the commercials.
Cool. So he's burrowing underground.
Yes.
How does it manifest in the game? Does he pop up in other places on the board?
Yeah. So how that basically works is when it's doing for Black Diabolos, when it's doing a claw behaviour, what it'll do is it'll determine its target before taking it away from the game board. So you'll determine target, say really far away if it's furthest. Then what it'll do is it'll take off the game board. It will reappear on the same node as that hunter, as if it had moved into the hunter's node normally, so they get pushed off, and then continue the rest of the behaviour from there. So it can continue to move and attack from that location.
Fun.
Yeah.
Okay, and then your second monster.
Oh, we got to pick 2, haven't we? I'm going to go Toby Kadachi, which is the lightning-based flying squirrel type creature. What I particularly love about this is you can set yourselves up really cleverly, and then if it triggers a behaviour that has the lightning effect on it, it will leap to a rock or a tree or a high position, and then it will perform its attack from that position. So it might target someone who's closest to it, but it will leap to the other side of the board and then kind of lightning bolt them from the other side of the board. And it means that it's really difficult as hunters to try and contain it. So it means that the game state is changing really quite rapidly.
I think it's interesting that we both sort of picked the teleportation mechanics because interestingly they're the only two monsters in the game that do that, but they're ones that we kind of both enjoy for different reasons.
Yeah,
but there's a ton of other stuff going on here as well. Like just to pick up another one, like Rathalos, like Diabolos has two different versions in the core box, and then you have regular Rathalos, which is kind of like your very stereotypical fire-breathing dragon that will sort of strafe sideways and breathe fireballs at you, and then Azure Rathalos, which is a slightly more, some would say tactical, some others would say irritating opponent, because every time you hit Azure Rathalos will back away from you. So you have to make sure you're continuously updating your positioning when you're fighting Azure Rathalos, otherwise the monsters are going to get out of reach. And that presents itself for a very different kind of tactical situation.
Perfect. Okay. And then what's the giant guy we have over here? This is your before we dive into the expansion. So which hunter do you each prefer most from your set, and why?
Oh, good one. Well, I'll dive into that one first. So I love the Charge Blade. So just from when we were doing the research on the game, both playing it and then from the visual perspective of just watching sort of lots of YouTube videos of people playing with the games of the hunters, then the Charge Blade, being able to have your weapon sort of lock itself into two different positions, because you hit yourself sometimes like a sword and shield, and it's like a giant axe.
Gotcha.
And then just dealing like sort of building up an amount of charge in your weapon with like these files that you do, which you do in the board game as well, and then unleashing that in sort of a giant unloaded attack toward the end. I really enjoy that sort of build up and unleash play style, and just also being a little bit, it's like the tank of that box as well, so you get to kind of be the person that's sort of standing at the front taking the damage, and then the person that's like unleashing hell towards the end of your turn.
As previously advertised, much simpler creature. I like the greatsword. I like just straight up running into things and hitting them with an enormous amount of damage.
That's fair.
Nice. Cool.
Which is why I also like the hammer out of the hunter's arsenal.
Well, I have a separate question.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, we'll come to shortly.
Sure.
But and so you started pulling a giant dragon there, if I recall?
Yes. So I always mispronounce this.
Kushala Daora.
Kushala Daora. Yes. This is like a wind-based creature. Puts an awful lot of effects down on the table that change the range of your ranged weapons, makes it harder for you to move about, and that's partly why I quite like taking the hammer into it, which we'll talk about in a second, because there's lots of movement effects in the big hammer guy. But for me, bigger is always better, and this is the biggest model that we have in the range, and I just think it's going to look magnificent on the tabletop.
Well, so let's take a step back from that for a second. So you get a core set. A core set has 4 hunters, 4 creatures.
Yep.
It has a bunch of terrain boards. It has actually a bunch. It has one map, right?
Yep.
One map each one.
Yep. So
double-sided.
It's two-sided.
Yes.
Yep.
And then past that, the general structure is you're going through, for the most part, you're going through the campaign. What's the general structure like? How many plays roughly? Each monster has 3 forms, if I recall.
Yeah, so just in the core box alone, we think there's somewhere between 25 and 30 hours of gameplay on a single playthrough of the campaign.
Gotcha.
What that is gives you it's like 25 campaign days. Each campaign day can be spent on a hunt. You can spend them on downtime activities as well. But each session takes you between an hour and a half, which is actually bearing itself out when people have been playing the game.
And in general, you are going to go through each form of each monster, right?
Yeah.
So 12 fights at a minimum, assuming you don't lose anything.
For sure.
Okay.
Now, you don't have to. You can skip to. So when you face a monster for the first time, you have to face its assigned quest version. That's like your introduction to the monster.
Yep.
Then you never face that again. It's one of the 2 levels of investigation quest.
Gotcha.
Some people can just jump to the highest difficulty if they want to, but it's recommended you work your way through because they will get progressively more difficult. But the higher version of the monster you face and defeat, the more loot you're going to get from it at the end.
Yeah.
So there's a sort of a risk-reward element into that.
Gotcha. So that's the basic core set, 25-30 hours gameplay, 4 different monsters, 3 different strengths per monster, a bunch of ways to integrate to go through that, level up your character and all that. That's the basic core set.
Yep.
You're going to have that from both sets there. Then, how does... Gosh, I don't remember her name at all.
Kushala Daora.
How does she, in terms of gameplay, what does she add? Does she
She's going to add time to your campaign.
Yes.
Okay.
So the core campaign focuses on you needed to defeat a 4-star rated monster.
Yep.
The Elder Dragons are 5-star rated. They have cool loot drops, which enable you to build. I can't remember what they're called. Even better weapons.
What are you going to do with those loot drops?
Elder Dragon level weapons. Well, one, you can use them to defeat that Elder Dragon, because you can fight earlier versions of the Elder Dragon to then help you defeat more difficult versions of the Elder Dragon.
Yep.
What you can
So she also has 3 strengths.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Correct. Yeah, the 5-star version is like the final card version. So you wouldn't win the campaign by just facing the assigned quest version of Kushala. You'd have to face the most difficult version of Kushala.
Yep.
If you happen to be playing with multiple Elder Dragons, or like with the rest of your core set, you can take those Elder Dragon weapons and then go and fight other monsters with it. Just because you've started fighting Kushala doesn't mean you have to finish on Kushala. You might want to go and get some armor set pieces from somewhere else. And if you've got multiple Elder Dragons, then they're also great for fighting other Elder Dragons with.
Okay, cool. Are there other Elder Dragons?
There are, because I picked one. It's here.
Oh, gotcha.
Okay,
Cool.
So this is Nergigante. We didn't get Nergigante out of the box yet. So Nergigante is another Elder Dragon, not quite the scale of Kushala with the wingspan, but a heck of a lot spikier. And
More spikes.
Yeah. So generally, when you're playing an Elder Dragon and you add one of these to your campaign, then you're going to add 5 more campaign days, and each one of those is like a regular event. So you're going to add about another 7.5, 8 hours of gameplay to your campaign. And the thing is, you're probably going to need all of that time because these Elder Dragons will defeat you. We only played a game earlier this week with Kushala where we barely got. In fact, we didn't even reach half health. We got completely and utterly nuked in that particular playthrough.
We did.
Yeah. Okay. So this is Nergigante. If I can just push that wing in there.
Go ahead. So you're saying.
Yeah, so with Nergigante, it's a completely different playing experience than to playing Kushala. So this is with the Elder Dragons.
By the way, pushing that wing in hurts. Like I hit the spikes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a spiky monster. Be careful as well. So with the Elder Dragons, we're able to push the boat out a little bit in terms of the depth of mechanics that we can put onto them as well. They're a more complicated experience as befits them with the way that they can sort of show their identity a bit more clearly. With Kushala, we were talking about sort of the ice and wind and pushing you away and making it more difficult to do range attacks and move around the game board. With Nergigante, it's like an escalating danger experience. So every time you damage Nergigante, it grows spike tokens, which will increase its armor in that particular body part. If Nergigante, and also Nergigante adds spikes to itself with certain behaviors as well. If it gets to a certain amount of behaviors, one, the armor becomes increasingly high, so you have just a really hard time putting damage onto it. And then another one is if it reaches a certain threshold, at the start of its turn, if you haven't broken the spikes off, which you can with breaking attacks, it will do its Nergigante dive, which is like its sort of like its superstar attack. It will jump up into the sky. People who have played Nergigante in the video game will recognise it as it jumps up into the sky and basically Superman dives towards you, fires spikes out in all directions, takes out multiple hunters, doing an enormous amount of damage.
It's quite painful.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So you're kind of on this like ticking time clock of you have to break the spikes off to be able to do good damage to it, and you're also trying to avoid seeing this Nergigante dive behavior come out as well.
Cool. So we have you have your favorite gods. You have your favorite core sets, your favorite expansions, your different Elder Dragons, and then we have the Hunter's Arsenal, which comes with I believe 6 more hunters.
Yep.
And what are your 2 favorite hunters from it?
The hammer and the hammer.
So the Hunting Horn Hunter, and the
just the hammer guy.
The hammer hunter.
The hammer hunter for me.
Oh, you were
is,
literally choosing the same
it's the
twice.
be all and end all. Yeah, absolutely.
I thought you were choosing the 2 people that hammers. I was like, okay, fine. So also the Hunting Horn. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's my gameplay personified as a hunter. It's lots of movement, and then you can build up. What it's got is a cool kind of series of combos where you build up a board of different effects that you then have enders that riff off of the effects you laid out on the board.
Correct.
So the important thing with the hammer guy is timing when to sharpen your hammer to make sure you keep your damage deck nice and healthy, because you are going to go through an awful lot of damage cards. You can put out huge amounts of damage. I think I did 15 in one hit yesterday. Yeah. But couple that with the amount of movement effects it's got, the Hammer Hunter can be anywhere on the tabletop, anywhere they want to be, and doing an enormous amounts of damage. You just need to manage your stamina.
Yeah, and have a good tank, because you are very clearly a glass hammer. Because in doing so, you have very full stamina boards. So if you get hit by the enemies, you're probably going to get taken out. But we have an effective tank when playing with the hammer. It means you just go wild with damage.
No, it was a lot of fun.
No, it was good. It was a good game.
And yourself?
So for me, I think it's 2 different hunters, which is so I'm going to start with the one that's less like the hammer. So I'm going to start with the gun lance.
Gun lance visually appeals to me the most. Yeah. Just the idea of a gun and the giant blade attached to it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's a very unique sort of weapon design to Monster Hunter, I believe. So it's a fun hunter to play because one, it's tanky. I quite like playing tanky, resilient hunters. It means you can sort of stand in front of the monster a little bit longer than other hunters can, rather than having to run away. And also because you're having to manage these sort of reload cards of shells that you have. Okay. So some of your attacks have shell symbols on top of them, which will do an additional damage card for each shell card that you spend. But that's another resource for you to manage. You have to reload cards to flip the cards back over again. And otherwise you're doing sort of very good burst damage, but you have to manage those shells carefully.
Gotcha.
So you're like a tanky hunter with burst damage.
And then second?
Interestingly, that's not too dissimilar in terms of how I described it to Charge Blade. It's just done in a very different way. Okay. Stuff. So you can see a sort of a theme in terms of the hunters I like to play.
It's almost like when we have preferences, they actually line up.
They actually line up.
The other one's quite different, which is the Hunting Horn. This is the one that like a truly unique weapon to how Monster Hunter works as a game.
Which one do you go? Hunting Horn.
Hunting Horn is literally like a bagpipe weapon. It's the battle duter, as sometimes it's known. So with the Hunting Horn cards, you actually have blue, red, and white notes on your attack cards. And you have something called a song card. If you can play your notes in a certain combination, Then you can flip your perform card over and actually activate the song, give a buff to all of the hunters around you, including yourself.
Gotcha.
So this is very much like you're a very true support kind of hunter. And with the other thing with the hunting horn as well is each different weapon that you create from different monsters, you get not only a different weapon but a different song list. So you'll have completely different effects that you can play with your perform card and put different effects onto your hunters. Additional armor, regenerate health, extra damage, extra movement, like all kinds of good stuff.
Cool.
So in a way, you can use that to complement the other hunters that you're hunting with.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like a very true support hunter.
Yeah. Yeah. Lots of functionality.
Excellent. So we have your favorite core game, your favorite thingies, and then your favorite hunters. Now, from the Kickstarter extras, what were the extra 2 sets you have from Kickstarter?
So it was Teostra, which is another Elder Dragon.
Another Elder Dragon.
So
Okay, cool.
Teostra is like very much a fire-based Elder Dragon.
So same concept. It's going to add 5 days, and you're going to integrate it to your campaign and have more Elder God stuff to go through.
Correct.
And then we had various alt sculpts or other things like that.
Yeah. So there's the Kulu-Ya-Ku expansion as well. So that comes with the Kulu-Ya-Ku monster, which is probably one of the smallest monsters, but definitely a fan favorite at different points as well. We're talking to West only recently about that, and the fact that in that set you get all of your daily unlocks from the Kickstarter campaign. So your alternate hunter sculpts. You also get your palicos, your poogie,
And the Palicos, yeah.
and the palicos. Everyone loves the palicos.
Cool. So that's the Monster Hunter lineup, I guess.
Yeah.
Pretty much. It's pretty simple. Yeah.
Apart from the recolored sculpts of Azure Athelos and Black Diabolos, but that, like I said, you already get the gameplay for those in the core boxes. Yeah.
Cool beans. Which means I think without knowing that much more, when I dive into this again, I think I probably will be starting with Wildspire Wastes and almost certainly the Gunlance. Yeah, just
good choice.
I mean, plus of course the other stuff I have to get to get moving, but yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you for the
There you
breakdown.
go.
This is helpful. Now I know where to start. And then past that, when you're diving from one set to the next, let's say so I've played through a campaign, I've done this core set, and now I want to dive onto the Ancient Forest. What happens as far as continuing? Do I start again, just a fresh from start, or?
So I'm glad you asked that. So you're probably best off doing that from the beginning. The reason why is that the first thing it does is it gives you a much wider array of choice in terms of which monsters you can go for. So if you think about it in terms of if you want to, you can plan it. You can be like, the iron monster we're going to go for is going to be Rathalos.
Okay.
So what we're going to do is we're going to target monsters that give us equipment that is useful to resist Rathalos' attacks and to afflict Rathalos' weaknesses. So perhaps maybe we're going to also fight Tobi-Kadachi in that set for like thunder damage, but we're also going to fight Diabolos because Diabolos' armor gives you fire resistance. So you do that kind of stuff as like a pathway towards your end goal of Rathalos. So having more monsters gives you sort of like a lot more width in terms of which ways you can go. But on top of that, you don't just have to play a hunter from the core set you're playing. So let's say I take a hunter from the Wildspire Wastes core set. I can go and hunt monsters in Ancient Forest and build different weapons from them. So the cards for, say, if I was
What do you mean different weapons for them?
So let's say I'm going to take a hunter from the Wildspire Wastes. So let's say I'm going to play the heavy bowgun.
Okay, cool.
And I'll play the heavy bowgun, but I want to fight, and I can't remember off the top of my head which ones you can and can't build weapons from.
But there's build paths within that core set, and
Yeah.
there's build paths within this core set for the models that are in that core set.
Exactly that.
So effectively, there's content within the systems that only sees its full potential when you're crossing systems.
When you put the two together.
So you have they're in the cellophanes, you probably won't see them in terms of the shininess, but you have these Forge reference cards.
Yeah.
And so this is taken from there, but you have Forge reference cards in Wildspire Waste. You have a set that is for the Wildspire Waste, but you have a set of Ancient Forest Forge reference cards in there as well for the hunters in there. So you would have your heavy bowgun hunter, which has your Wildspire Waste Forge reference cards. That's all the weapons you can make from the Wildspire Waste.
Okay.
And then you have the Ancient Forest Forge reference card that tells you the weapons that the heavy bowgun hunter can make from the Ancient Forest. So that when you go and play those monsters, you have additional cards in there that you can use to build those weapons, other weapons that you otherwise wouldn't have access to. But we built it that way to make sure the games speak to each other properly and have the integration.
Well, now this is getting ahead of ourselves to a certain degree, but we have obviously Monster Hunter World Iceborne coming to Kickstarter May 18th, and you're gonna have different core sets. And we've talked about this. We have a full different conversation. You can check that out. But like the systems are theoretically integratable, but not necessarily built around that. You can integrate stuff, but it's not promising balance or this or that, anything else.
Right.
How does that mesh with the weapons and things? Can you use a hunter from if you're using a hunter from Iceborne in regular Monster Hunter World because it's the same 14 hunters? Are you using the same gear?
That's not officially supported, but because it's based on the same engine,
You can do
then
what you want.
It's very possible to do. There's definitely going to be an element of homebrew rules to make that work like succinctly.
yeah.
But you definitely could do that.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate this. This is very helpful. I'll
No,
be down
great.
with this. Thank you.
Thank you.
And you can check out what was I going to say? You can check out, we'll have a conversation around Monster Hunter World Iceborne, and then past that, like I mentioned already, there's already an unboxing, and there should be a playthrough coming as well. I'll have links to those down below as they pop up. Until next time, appreciate the breakdown. Jamie, Matt, thanks so
for having
much.
Thank you.
And have a good one.